Crossover special. We are teaming up with Kyle Carr from Locked On Anaheim Ducks to discuss our thoughts on the Chris Kreider trade, what the future might hold for new Ranger prospect Carey Terrance, the groundbreaking trade of Trevor Zegras, and much more.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1338 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chik. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Rugiet. 150,000 men have made the switch. Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL. Use code LockedOnNHL to get 15% off of your order. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So yeah, like I was saying, basically just going to be teaming up. We've done these episodes in the past, although this is our first crossover episode with Kyle Carr from Locked On Ducks. We have a great time just talking about the Chris Kreider trade from all angles. He's going to give us some intel on Carey Terrance, who was the prospect, 20-year-old prospect that the Rangers acquired in that deal. And of course, got to talk about the earth-shattering trade of Trevor Zegras to the Philadelphia Flyers. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and play our crossover episode with Kyle Carr of Locked On Ducks. All right, so with no further ado, let's go ahead and kick off this very special crossover episode. This is John Chik with Locked On New York Rangers, joined by Kyle Carr of Locked On Anaheim Ducks. And Kyle, our two teams striking, I don't know if you'd call it a blockbuster, but certainly a very significant trade. Chris Kreider and a fourth-round pick go to the Ducks in exchange for Carey Terrance and a third-round pick. Kreider's the big name in the deal, so I'll toss it over to you, man. Any questions that you have for me, feel free to fire away.
Yeah, definitely. I just, obviously he's a lifelong New York Ranger, many seasons with the team. What should the Ducks expect out of Kreider, and what do you think he's going to bring to this Anaheim squad?
Yeah, I mean, he is coming off of what I think most Ranger fans would consider to be his most disappointing season. Now, part of that was at least due slightly to a bad back that seemed to linger for just about the entire season, but just didn't look like himself. As far as what he can still bring to the table, I think a change of scenery first and foremost is going to do him some good. But I would say this, whether he went to the Ducks or anybody else, I think the area where he can help a hockey team more so than anywhere else right now, going forward, probably for the rest of his career, is going to be on special teams. He has been a very important part of both the Rangers' power play and penalty kill over the last bunch of seasons. He only started killing penalties maybe about 5 or 6 seasons ago, which is actually, the second half of his Ranger tenure. That's how long he's been here. But, I happened to look this up because I was curious to see where Anaheim ranked in terms of special teams. And it certainly was not a strength of the team this past season. I saw the power play was dead last at 11.8%. I can't really say anything about that because the Rangers were 5th to last. They weren't really any better. But obviously, Anaheim struggled in that area. And then you look at the PK, and that also was 4th to last in the league for Anaheim at 74.2%. So I think he's going to help in a big way there. Kreider, even in what was certainly a disappointing season, still had his place on the top power play unit. I think over the last few years, he's really established himself as one of the best, if not the best, net front presence in the entire game. Again, maybe this most recent season notwithstanding. But when he sets up shop there and doesn't feel like moving, there's not a whole lot that defenders can do about it. And he's ridiculously good at those deflections in front of the net, just redirecting it pretty much wherever he wants it to go, putting it into the net. And then on the PK, I mean, his positioning is always pretty spot on, and he can create some offense on the PK too. It's not uncommon to see him break out of the zone when the Rangers are shorthanded and go in on a rush and potentially even score on a breakaway. So I think special teams is where he's going to help the most. And as far as where he'll line up, I mean, I think certainly in the top 9, maybe the top 6, depending on how you guys look to line up next season.
Absolutely. And it's kind of interesting that Anaheim sort of picked up this New York Ranger light type roster now with Frank Vetrano, Ryan Strome, Jacob Trouba, and now Chris Kreider. Are those players that when you look back at the Rangers, when all those guys are on the team, are they kind of the core of what the Rangers were? Like, is this just everyone moved together to the West Coast, or are they kind of separate pieces of the team and it just happens that they're coming to Anaheim?
Yeah, I mean, they were all, they'll always hold a special place in my heart because they were all there when the Rangers kind of turned everything back around. The first year of Gerard Gallant, which we're going back now, geez, I guess that's 4 seasons ago at this point, but everybody thought they were still rebuilding. They end up in the Eastern Conference Final. Nobody even thought they were going to make the playoffs, and all 4 of those players were part of that. You know, Frank Vetrano came over at the deadline that season, but he played an important role, and the rest of them had already been there for, you know, a couple of seasons each. It is kind of funny that they all just randomly seem to find their way to the Anaheim Ducks, but you know, certainly I hold them all in high regard. I mean, with Jacob Trouba, I think his play had slipped, and I think the Rangers had to get out from underneath that contract. With Kreider, it's somewhat similar. You know, you are kind of, I think most Ranger fans have mixed feelings, but I think most of us also recognize that it probably was time for this to happen. And Kreider's been there forever, but you know, even Strome, he had an important role. Him and Artemi Panarin worked very well together. It's a great group, and I'll be honest, man, if the Ducks are able to, you know, work their way into the playoffs next season in the Western Conference, I'm pulling for them because there's 4 former Rangers over there, and all those guys contributed at least somewhat to this team having some really good seasons.
Absolutely. And with Kreider coming over, do you think the move was more of a cap space issue for the Rangers? Do you think that the relationship had soured with the Rangers and Kreider, or was this just more of a business type situation?
I think it's all of the above. Honestly, even if the relationship hadn't soured, which it seemed like it did between the Rangers' core leaders and the front office, there was a whole bunch of drama going on pretty much throughout all of last season. But when you look at where the Rangers stand in terms of their cap space, even after moving Kreider, it's still a little bit tight. I mean, they might be able to pull off one big free agent, somewhat big free agent signing. That's at least possible, but that's going to be about it. Other than that, it's basically just going to be patchwork. So I think that cap hit for Kreider, it might have necessitated this regardless. But the fact that, you know, everything just kind of fell apart last season and the Rangers seem to just not be bringing effort on a lot of nights and seem to be lacking in the leadership department, I think that kind of sealed his fate. And, you know, Kreider, it was a really rough final season for him with the Rangers. But I think as time goes on here, myself and other Ranger fans, we're going to look at the big picture. And we're going to remember Kreider being here for like 15 years and all these different eras of Ranger hockey, scoring all these big-time playoff goals, which I'm sure you hope he can now do for the Ducks. Yeah. But yeah, man, I just think it was time. Sometimes it's just time to make a move like this, and I think we got there with Kreider.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting that the Ducks kind of are taking this not really old route, but a more veteran presence route. I thought that the last couple of years were that time frame for that. But now with Kreider coming over, and I kind of will get into it later, I thought this was going to be more of a relationship to kind of bolster Trevor Zegras and get him going. But now that trade has occurred, what do you think with Chris Kreider? Like, is he going to be more of a top 6 role for the Ducks, or do you see him being more mid-6?
I mean, it depends. I feel like, you know, this is something else we're going to talk about a little bit later, but you guys have Joel Quenneville now, and I would imagine that he's somebody that might defer to veterans. I feel like just about every coach in the NHL does that to some degree. So, I mean, I'm looking at your depth chart right now. They've got Kreider. I mean, take this with a grain of salt, but Daily Faceoff has him penciled in as the second line left winger with McTavish and Terry. And I mean, I think that works. I feel like a top 6 spot might sort of be his to lose, if that makes sense. And obviously, you never know when you need a shakeup or whatever might happen where guys move up the lineup, guys move down the lineup. But, you know, I think Kreider, at the worst, he'll be on the third line. And I see him probably as like a second liner at this point in his career. That might be where he ends up starting, you know, with the Ducks.
Absolutely. Do you think that the injury was, is that something that Ducks fans should be concerned about, or was that just a really one-off coincidental season with that injury?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what Ducks fans should probably be hoping for is that, you know, that's an injury that will get better with some rest, because obviously, you know, the Rangers didn't make the playoffs, so he didn't have to go through the grueling tournament this season. But it sounds to me like, and this is just piecing together different reports that I saw and things that Kreider himself said, it was one of those things that just kind of lingered throughout the entire season. Back injury, I'm no doctor, but back injuries, from my understanding, can be a little bit tricky. They just kind of come and go at times. And I mean, I guess there's some concern there, but he's not somebody that's ever really been an injury-prone player. I mean, I guess he's getting a little bit older now, but I don't think it's a major concern. And again, not being a medical professional of any kind, I would imagine that this much time off would probably do him some good going into next season.
Well, it's definitely exciting that he's here, and hopefully the Ducks do crack into the playoffs, and I think that he's going to be a big contributor. What do you notice with his game when there's the regular season and then the playoffs? Like what next level does he bring when the playoffs start to kick in?
Yeah, well, as you know, I mean, the playoffs, there's just a whole nother gear. There's just a whole nother speed. It's not just like straight line speed either. It's like everything has to be quicker. Your decision making, everything. And he just always seemed to thrive in that environment. And I think the fact that he's a homegrown Ranger tended to help him, through the years in the playoffs, because fan bases in general, I feel like they go a little bit easier on their own homegrown prospects than they might on guys that come over from other teams and the expectations are really high. So everybody knew, Kreider was this first-round pick. And he actually debuted in the Stanley Cup playoffs the one year, like a day after he got done playing college hockey. So that was pretty wild. And, his size and his strength, I think that works in his advantage in the playoffs. And just the fact that I think he's kind of born for the bright lights, man. Some guys just kind of have that. And he's come up with countless clutch playoff goals in the postseason. And the most clutch was actually just last season, which if you'd have told me then that like everything would fall apart and Kreider would be on the, I would have had no idea what you were talking about. Right. But he, in game 6 against the Canes, Rangers are down 3-1 and they're looking at a possible reverse sweep here. And Kreider just goes off in the third period, gets the natural hat trick and basically just carries them to the conference finals. So he can come up with those big time clutch moments. And I'd like to see, again, all those former Rangers on the Ducks, I'd like to see them make it and see if he can have similar success out west.
That's the hope. That's the hope out here.
Yeah.
Not the Rangers of the West.
Amen. Amen. So if you have any other Kreider questions, I'm all ears. Otherwise, maybe we'll shift our attention over to Carey Terrance. Obviously, not as much of a household name, but I'll ask you a couple questions about him.
Yeah, we can move on over to him. I think we got it pretty much settled on what Kreider's going to be bringing to Anaheim.
Absolutely. So in just a second, we will talk about Carey Terrance, and then we're going to get into the Trevor Zegras trade, a whole bunch of other offseason storylines for both teams as well, and we'll do that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Rugiet. You've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pill that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average, in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and more present in the moment. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL and use code LockedOnNHL to get 15% off today. That's Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL and use promo code LockedOnNHL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on this very special crossover edition of Locked On Rangers and Locked On Ducks. For the everydayers, you're going to want to stick with both shows moving forward. We got the draft coming up. We got free agency, exciting times around the NHL. So there's that. But for today, Kyle, I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about Carey Terrance. Again, not a household name, hasn't even played professionally yet. 20-year-old center, second-round pick by the Ducks in 2023, has been very productive with the Erie Otters of the OHL, especially the last 2 seasons there. In your opinion, is Terrance somebody that was difficult for you and other Ducks fans to say goodbye to, or do you think it was worth it in terms of, acquiring Chris Kreider? Was Kreider worth it to give up, the 1 pick and then also Carey Terrance as well?
Yeah, honestly, I think that there was definitely some, not really like rumblings or, get the pitchforks and cause chaos type upsetness, but there was some, I think there was a lot of people that had a hope to see him more in a Ducks uniform, and they were looking forward to seeing him hopefully crack the roster, especially going down looking at his performance with the Erie Otters and being the captain of that team and just kind of setting the example. And especially when he played for Team USA, just seemed to have like this kind of grit to him that the Ducks were looking for, but didn't really make it into the NHL roster. He played for some of the rookie tournaments and stuff. And I just think there's too much of a logjam in front of him in Anaheim. So looking at it for like the player's perspective, I think it's a little bit better for him to have moved to the Rangers so he can actually hopefully crack into the NHL. And I think that's what Verbeek was kind of trying to do with that trade. He tends to, as much as it doesn't seem like it, he does seem to care about the players and their future and making sure that they have the path to get to the big leagues, or at least have the best development possible.
Absolutely. Now, it does seem like he might be, I mean, he's 20 years old. He is a second-round pick. I guess it's not impossible that he could make his NHL debut this upcoming year, but my best guess would be, he'd be ticketed for the AHL. And we'll see how it all shakes out. But where do you think he ranked before he was traded by the Ducks in terms of their prospects? I mean, are we talking like, is this like a top 5 prospect for you guys, top 10? Like, whereabouts is he in that mix? I know it's kind of hard to just rank off the top of your head, but to the best of your ability.
I'd say within the forwards group, he's probably like a top 25, just out of everything that's in the AHL and in the system right now. Like, I think Beckett Seneca took a lot of the highlights and kind of took a lot of people's attention away from the prospects and kind of what the example and sample size is going to be. I mean, you got Leo Carlson that just stepped right in. He was definitely someone that had potential to come up just with his size and his grit and the speed that he brings and the type of play that he has, that being Terrance. But I didn't see him being like, this guy needs to crack the roster right now. Like, why are we keeping him down there? Like, we need to get him going. I definitely think he's going to be more of a slow developer, but one of those that could be a sneaky breakout type player when he finally does break into the league and has that proper development. He might just take the league by storm, honestly.
That's good to know. And he's somebody that, as I was doing my research on him, because again, I wasn't really all that familiar with him. I kind of liked what I saw, just different things that different scouts were saying about him and whatnot. And like we both mentioned, he's obviously produced with the Erie Otters, so that's good to know as well. Something else with the Rangers, I've been saying this for quite some time. They're not necessarily a slow team, but I wouldn't say that they're a fast team either. And you mentioned, we were DMing about a week ago or whatever it was. You mentioned that one of Terrance's strengths happens to be his speed and his ability to potentially do some damage off of the rush, which we didn't see nearly enough of from the Rangers this past season. Am I accurate? I mean, is that right on as far as like his biggest strength and what he most brings to the table, that speed, that ability to create something off of the rush?
Yeah, definitely. He has a ability to be that kind of breakout center. He really supports the defense well, and then is able to have the good vision to either hit his wingers or just move the puck up through the neutral zone. Once he gets into that offensive zone too, he's got a great shot off the rush. Like, if he's in motion or if he's got the setup for the shot, like he just has that ability to continue to move the puck forward with speed, a lot of north-south type style of play, but he also has good edge work as well. So he can kind of do the start and stop type offense as well and shake defenders and everything. So he's not as like, I guess Patrick Kane in a way where he can just move and like has the stick handling skills. His domination is definitely more just going north to south and getting the puck quickly up into the offensive zone.
Gotcha. And one more question that I have about Terrance is, just in general, and I know, you probably haven't watched every single Erie Otters game that he's ever played in, right? But generally speaking, is there any area of his game, whether it's anything that you've noticed or anything coming from scouts that, maybe needs to improve a little bit, something that he can maybe work on and do a little bit better? And granted, he's only 20 years old, but anything that jumps to mind there?
I would say that he doesn't there's nothing I can really think of that comes to mind that he needs to really work on. I mean, I think everything comes with the NHL and moving up in levels anyways. It's just that the quick reaction, the ability to pick lanes fast. Like everyone always talks about, like, you don't get it until you get into the league and just how less space you have. So I'd say spatial awareness and probably just that defensive aware as a center to really get back and be able to shut down top guys, especially if you're going up against guys like, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, just with recency bias, or a Barkov. Like that defensive skill needs to be a little bit more honed in.
Yeah, I think that's typically the case for a lot of young players, so that's interesting to hear as well. And one more question that I have about this entire trade before we move on to the Zegras stuff and a couple of other things. You asked me a bunch of questions about Kreider. I didn't really get your opinion on it, though. Like, how did you feel when this whole thing, that the rumors were swirling, and it looks like the Ducks are in on Kreider, they might trade for him? Were you for it? Were you against it? Were you kind of neutral? Just kind of give me your thoughts on the entire thing.
For me, I was pretty for it. Looking at what the trade was, and it was Carey Terrance, a prospect, a little bit of draft work there. I didn't feel like it was an awful trade. I love Chris Kreider, huge fan. Last May when they were in the Eastern Conference Finals, I went to New York City for the first time ever. And got to go get some stuff, and I got a Kreider shirt and everything. And I was really excited to see him, and just knowing that veterans type play he has. And one thing that I was really excited for that the Ducks really lacked on last season was that second chance scoring. I felt like the Ducks were never in that spot where, like, if the puck was was a rebound, or if it went off the boards or whatever it was, like, they were never in that right spot to pick that up, where I feel like Chris Kreider just has that nose to he just has a magnet like sense to where that puck's going to bounce off to, and he's there for that second chance. So I was really excited about that. Obviously the power play, penalty kill, he's going to help the Ducks there. But I kind of mentioned it in the first part is I was really excited because I thought that he was going to be kind of this bolster to get Zegras going. And that's kind of why Verbeek was looking at him. Like, I know the GMs don't talk to the players that much, but I'm sure he had at least an inkling to know like just how well connected they were. So I was kind of thinking that there'd be a revival of Zegras there, but to really hear why he chose to waive his no move clause, and to hear that it was from the players, like whether they were trying to or not, like just their conversation about Anaheim made him want to come out here. That gives me a lot of hope that the players are buying in and that they're feeling something going on. And, I think if you asked the players last year that same question, it would not have been the vibe. So to hear that things are positive moving forward, players are excited about the coach hire, and they're basically inadvertently recruiting players to come here and waive their no move clause. That's a big thing for me.
Yeah, you can tell Kreider wants to go there because, first of all, to your point, the Ducks were on Kreider's list, so he didn't have to accept a trade there, but he's got former teammates there. I think I heard something where he's intrigued by playing for Quenneville, and obviously there's some exciting young players on the Ducks, even with Zegras no longer being there. So I think it's a good landing spot for him, and obviously I wish him all the best as a lifelong Ranger fan and somebody that's obviously enjoyed watching him over the past decade and a half here. But in just a second, we'll keep everything rolling. Definitely want to ask you a little bit about Trevor Zegras. We'll get into some of the other offseason storylines for both teams as well. All right, we'll go ahead and keep everything rolling on this special crossover edition of Locked On Rangers and Locked On Ducks. And Kyle, we can't go another second longer without talking about Trevor Zegras. I mean, we've mentioned it a couple times off and on already here, but yeah, man, I mean, this trade happens out of nowhere a couple of days ago. I mean, maybe not really out of nowhere. There was always a little bit of smoke there, but it's still surprising when it does happen. And he's now a member of the Flyers. And I don't know, to me, it kind of felt like they sold low, but I'll let you kind of expound upon it there. What do you think about this deal?
I thought it was terrible on Verbeek's end. Like, I literally tweeted that morning because I saw the rumblings about, keep an eye out on Trevor Zegras, and I retweeted it saying, honestly, after what Pat Verbeek said during the postseason and we call it a migration event. It's for all the season ticket holders. He talked about Zegras and his work ethic and how well he even though he was not his play style, he fit with Cronin and did what Cronin asked for him to do. And Like it was just he did everything he was asked by management, by the coaching staff, and it just sounded like Verbeek was like, oh, he actually kind of proved to me like he's here for the team, and then the moves of bringing Quenneville in, bringing Chris Kreider over, like it just seemed like he was kind of doing all these things to get Zegras like to back to form. Like it just like I know he's not the only player on the team, but it just really felt like the moves were oriented around Zegras's play style. And like I think Quenneville was his favorite coach growing up. Kreider's one of his best friends, and they do stuff in the offseason. Like it just seemed like he was building this up for him, and then he just shipped him off for literally chump change. Like nothing, no offense to Ryan Pulling, but the Zegras's almost worst season this last year was he had more points than Pulling's best season. So I don't know what Verbeek sees or what he thinks he's going to get out of this move. The fan base is absolutely shook. People are still tweeting and commenting about it, how just like disgusted they are with this move. And it just, it really seemed like a blindside and like, just I want this kid gone type of move. And I was on the trade Zegras like train when it was last during the deadline, and then like after he came back from injury and he really kind of showed his 200-foot game had improved and he was doing a lot better. I was like, all right, I think he's locked in. I think he saved himself from a trade, and then this just came up. So yeah, I'm very shook, and it's a very interesting move, especially going to the East Coast. Now he's with Jamie Drysdale, and they're reunited. I guess that's a good thing. But after the trade of bringing Cutter Gauthier over from the Flyers and building up this roster to be a more skilled, more talented team, and like he said, we're going to constantly be trying to retool this roster. And my thinking is like, okay, I get you're trying to retool the roster, but when you have a screwdriver for a screw, you're not going to trade the screwdriver for a wrench when you already have the screwdriver. Like, I don't think the tool that we needed was Ryan Pulling. I think we had Trevor Zegras, and that's what the Ducks need to build around. But I'm not the GM, so there's not much I can do now, but it definitely was not fun.
Yeah, I get it, man. It's one of those things where it's just like you look at the trade and Ryan Poehling and a second rounder and a fourth rounder, and it almost contradicts the Kreider trade. And not just because the two of them are buddies, but because like you bring in Kreider, he's got 2 years left on his deal. He's not getting any younger. He still can be a solid veteran player, hopefully, for you guys. But that's like a win now kind of a move. And then you're taking the face of your franchise to acquire a player who's not as good as him and 2 draft picks, one of which won't even happen until next season. So, yeah, I don't know. The whole thing just kind of seemed a little bit strange to me. And, now I got to deal with Zegras being in the Metro with the Flyers. But,
sorry,
the Flyers have a way to go. I don't know if they're just Trevor Zegras away from competing. But I don't know, man. If he regains form, it's not going to be a lot of fun watching him for the next decade plus here.
Yeah, him and Mitchkov are going to be doing Mishies the whole game.
Yeah.
I think Tortorella's going to have a heart attack.
Yeah.
Thank goodness he's not there anymore.
Yeah. So another big storyline here is obviously the Ducks go ahead and they hire Joel Quenneville. He's back in the NHL. Obviously, there's some mixed feelings there among hockey fans, probably among the Ducks fans as well. Bit of a touchy subject, but just your thoughts on the Ducks, rolling the dice here and taking I guess a little bit of a leap of faith with bringing Joel Quenneville back into the league.
It's definitely a roll of the dice. There was literal pitchforks and torches out here when the word came out that they were thinking about it, and then the hire actually happened. And yeah, there's a lot of people not happy about it. I feel like their press conference, they said all the right things. And according to them, they've done all the due diligence and they've gotten the approval from Kyle Beach. And I say if they didn't, like he could have already come out and said like, no, I actually was against this by now. And it sounds like he's been doing all this work and Quenneville's been taking all these classes. He had like basically a mentor of someone that dealt with the same kind of situation when they were in the NHL. And he's trying to get into advocacy groups in local areas and everything. But I'm a big, you can say all the right things, but we have to see the action actually come through. So I want to see how that works with the local groups and what they're going to be having throughout the season and how they're going to be supporting that initiative. And then on the hockey side, though, I think it's a brilliant hire to go from Cronin to Quenneville. The fact that people are waiving their no move clauses to come to this team, they're excited to play for him. Last year in free agency, we had players that denied the Ducks because of the coach, and it's just it's a good move for that initiative and to try to push them into the playoffs. Yeah, he's been out of the league for a while, but he just seems like one of those masterminds that hockey's just in his blood, and he's going to figure out how to adjust to the new game. And he's got great team in Anaheim, great players that he's already played with or worked with, and the hype is there. So I think it's going to be a good move for them when it comes to the hockey and the adjustments. And I really hope they can make it into the playoffs. I think it's going to be a battle for that wild card spot because I just don't think they have the tools yet. I don't think the roster's built extremely well-rounded around getting into the playoffs, or at least if they do, it's going to be an early bounce out. But we'll see how the offseason goes here. There's a lot of time left with free agency coming up in the draft, so we'll see what Verbeek does. Again, it could be a very short tenure for Pat Verbeek if things do not go the way that everyone's expecting them to go, especially after that Zegras move.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Quenneville, as far as the on-ice stuff is concerned, I mean, you can't really argue with his track record. Obviously, the thing that really stands out are, the 3 Stanley Cups in Chicago. But beyond that, I mean, it's easy to forget this now. And granted, the Panthers have made some wheelings and dealings since Quenneville was there. But man, I mean, he had them going in the right direction too. And look at what they've become. And I know that they've made some important trades since obviously he was the coach. But yeah, I mean, his track record speaks for itself. And, I think he'll be a good hire for the Ducks as, for this upcoming season. We'll see how it goes. And we get a new coach too. We got Mike Sullivan. Yeah. So
bringing over the Penguins.
Yeah, man, that's a wild situation for Ranger fans because we're so used to viewing him as the enemy. He's been the Penguins head coach for, I think it was 10 years before he came to the Rangers, and obviously won 2 Stanley Cups and all these different playoff battles that the Rangers and Penguins have been in. I've made the argument on here. I know some people will fight me on this and say that the Islanders are the Rangers' biggest rival. For me, it's the Penguins. And I don't know if that's because I wasn't around for the Islander dynasty, thank God. But yeah, I mean, that's been back and forth, and Sullivan's been part of that. But, of all the retread coaching options, I think Sullivan was probably at the top of my list as far as like the best option of the bunch.
That's what I was kind of thinking where the Ducks would land. Like, even though it was like 2 years ago when they first announced that he could return, Joel Quenneville could return to coaching. I was like, I feel like the Ducks might target him. Like, I could see them trying to go because we got this young squad. It's very similar. And then it ended up coming true. But when it came to this year and the talks of Mike Sullivan being let go from Pittsburgh were starting to come up, I was like, that would be a great coaching hire. That would be amazing for Anaheim. So you guys are definitely got a score there. And now you got Rick Tocchet out in Philly. So the Metro is going to be an interesting division to watch this year. Yeah, for sure it is. And Kyle, this was a ton of fun. Awesome talking some hockey here. For Locked On Ranger listeners, why don't you let them know where they can find you on social and whatnot? Thanks. Yeah, so we're on all the socials, Blue Sky, X, Instagram, TikTok. Just look up Locked On Anaheim Ducks because there is an Oregon Ducks. So Locked On Anaheim Ducks. I think on X it's LO_Ducks. And then the Blue Skies, it's so weird the way they have those things, but just look up Locked On Anaheim Ducks. You'll find us there. And then obviously on YouTube, go like and subscribe to the podcast. We're breaking down the Trevor Zegras trade this week and just doing the off-season grind. How about it? And for any Ducks fans, you can find us on social media, Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it. Find me at JChik17 or the show at LO_NY_Rangers. So with all that said, Kyle, is a ton of fun, and we'll definitely have to do this again sometime during the season when these teams are playing each other. Absolutely. Thanks, John, and good luck with the draft and free agency. You too, bro. We'll talk soon. Sounds good.